Sorry, Dr. Ellis is not able to be here. He had to testify on some bills in our legislature this year. So just wanted to give you a quick rundown. I'll focus animal disease traceability in Texas. I'll focus primarily on cattle because horses, pigs, sheep, all those species, I think traceability is there and has been for years. So in Texas, our traceability system up until the summer of 2011 was heavily reliant on brucellosis testing. Okay, so we tested over 2.5 million animals a year in Texas, and we entered those official IDs into the generic database. And so when we needed to trace any animal, we entered all the negative animals as well as the positive. So when there was a need to trace animals, we just looked to the generic database. Well, in the summer of 2011, brucellosis testing became optional in Texas. So testing at livestock markets tailed off. We've still tested everything at slaughter plants and will continue to through the end of August, but then that will drop back to 1 plant or 2 plants in Texas. So last summer, in the summer of 2012, our commission passed some rules that would require official identification of all animals changing ownership. Basically, we took the Brucellosis Rule, and you're familiar with the test age requirement of 18 months of age and older have to have an official ID. So we took that rule and just removed the test part and left the identification part in place, and put that out as our animal identification rule. And at first we said that had to be done at livestock markets. Well, the livestock market officials didn't like that because it seemed like we were picking on them. Basically, we were focusing on the markets and not on the country sales or private treaty sales. And so we took that rule back, revised it, and said any change of ownership in this state, whether it's private treaty or a video auction or at a livestock market, had to have the animal had to be officially identified. So that rule was passed last summer. It was set to go into effect January 1st. When Neil had said it was a joyous day when the federal rule was announced, it was not a joyous day for Texas because a critical part of that rule, to us, a critical part of that rule was being a requirement to have an official ID, meaning at least a news tag on animals going to slaughter. We felt like that was important because with the drought going on, for the last several years, there were a lot of cattle, slaughter cattle, that were fed for weeks or months before they were actually slaughtered. And so those back tags are long gone. So it might be a cow from Kansas or Colorado or New Mexico or some other state in our feedlot, being fed and then slaughtered and have TB or brucellosis, and then we have no identification on the animal. So not traceable, not good. So we felt strongly that the slaughtered cattle should have a tag, official ID also, but the federal rule did not contain that requirement. It allows them to move on a back tag if they're slaughtered within 3 days after delivery to a slaughter plant. So our industry built steam, I guess, had an interest in us backing off on that rule. I'll just say it nicely that way. And so we are doing that. Our next commission meeting in May will be backing off on the requirement to have official ID on slaughter cattle. But the Livestock Market Association is meeting with us. We're working with them. They're saying they will help us enforce the rule so that anyone buying a slaughter animal to make sure they actually get to slaughter and don't divert those cattle. So that we should have a good traceability system based on that back tag. So that's where we are. In reviewing our state rules, we found at least 25 places where we're going to have to change the wording of our rule to match the traceability rule. So we'll start that process in May at our next commission meeting. We chose to use the SCS database rather than USA herds, and we implemented that database last fall. It's going well. We basically opened the door to all electronic CVIs. I mean, some states have tried. It seems like have tried to steer the veterinarians of the use toward certain CVIs. We're allowing Texas veterinarians to use all versions that are available. Global VetLink is well established in the state that they can use VSPS, the federal version. VetCentry is talking to us about electronic CVIs. I know Trace First has their state vet, their CVI out soon, or is being tried, I think, in a couple states. And we've been watching what Colorado. I think you'll hear Dr. Rohr and others talk about the CBI they in Kansas have developed, and so Dr. Ellis has asked that we have our own in-house electronic CBI. So when we do that, it'll likely be based on that model that Dr. Rohr and his team have put together. So just moving forward, I would just say Dr. Ellis asked me to encourage the group and USDA officials that as we go forward to review the rule and say in a year or so and see what we found out since then. As some of these things are worked out, problems are identified, and for example, there's no time requirement on when a slaughter animal is sold until it actually has to be delivered. The 3 days or 72 hours is after it's delivered to slaughter. So an animal can sit at a livestock market or be carried back out to a pasture for weeks or months before it's actually delivered to slaughter. So if that could be narrowed down, that would be appreciated.